Welcome to the BO's Cooking Show, where good food comes with no stress, no fluff, and just real flavor. I'm here to show you how to cook meals that taste amazing without overthinking it. Whether you're a beginner or you're just tired of takeout, let's make something that you actually want to eat. Hit the subscribe button, tap the bell, and let's turn your kitchen into your favorite spot to eat.
What's up, y'all? And welcome to the first episode of the BO's Cooking Show. Now, if you know me, then you know that I've always been around the kitchen and I've always been cooking. Actually, I got my cooking inspiration from my father. My father's been in the kitchen cooking ever since I was a child, and I caught the cooking bug at a very young age. So before we get into the episode, I do like to dedicate the channel to my pops, because without my pops, I wouldn't be here today. Now, another goal that I would like to accomplish with the cooking show is for all level cooks out there to get over the initial fear of messing up in the kitchen. Yes, cooking can be intimidating, and yes, you can and will mess up your dish, especially if you're in the beginning stages of learning how to cook. I want to create an easy and friendly environment to where we would go over recipes and we would just go through the process, and I can show you that cooking is not as intimidating as it comes off. I'll be going over some of my favorite recipes, and also I'll be going over some recipes that you guys send in, and we'll go through the process together. For today, the first recipe that we'll be doing is my honey chicken jerk pasta. So now that we've got the intro out of the way and we know what we're about to make, let's get into the recipe.
Alright, so let's start off with all the ingredients that you need to make the honey jerk chicken pasta. You want to start off with your penne noodles. You need you some honey, some parmesan cheese, of course some peppers of your choice. You can do green pepper, red pepper, or orange peppers. You need to get you some onions, yellow onions or Vidalia onions. You also need to get you some green onions for garnish. You need to get you some garlic, jerk marinade seasoning, some heavy cream, chicken stock, and also some chicken breast. Alright, so now after you have washed and cleaned your chicken, you are going to cut them into strips. Once you cut them into strips, then you'll turn them horizontal and you'll dice them up. So I personally like to cut my chicken into cubes just so that you don't have big chunks inside of your pasta. And I always leave one chicken breast by itself just in case if you wanted to plate it the way that I plated it in the finished product in the video earlier. Then I would just take one chicken breast, sear it, and then I would just cut it into long strips. But for the pasta, for the most part, I just cut it into cubes. Alright, so once you cut up your chicken breast, then you put them in a bowl to the side. So I start off by marinating the chicken by putting honey on it first. I like to toss it in honey to get it nicely coated before I put the marinade on it. I just do a light toss with the honey, and then after I do that, I then go with the jerk marinade seasoning. This is the jerk marinade seasoning that I use. I use mild personally because it already has a kick, but I also do another trick where I put a little orange juice inside of the marinade just to loosen it up a little bit. I know sometimes with the jerk seasoning, it can be a little pasty or a little thick. So just to give it a little citrus flavor and to loosen up the marinade a little bit, I do put a little orange juice in it. That is completely optional. You don't have to put the orange juice in it if you don't want to, but that's just something that I do. Now that the jerk mayonnaise on it, I throw a little complete in there, and then of course I come in with the Miss Dash table blend. And these are the seasonings that I use. Now granted, you are more than welcome to use whatever seasonings you prefer as well, but these are the ones that I use for my pasta. So you are more than welcome to transition and use whatever you prefer. Alright, so we're going to move on to the next step in the recipe, which is going to be making your noodles. So you put some water into the pot because you need to get ready to bring this water to a boil so that you can put your noodles in to cook them. Now, there's two things that you could do to prevent your noodles from sticking while cooking them, and that's either to put oil or to put salt. Just depending on what you have in your cabinet or whatever preference you prefer, you can use either one of those to make sure that your noodles don't stick while you're boiling them. Now, for me personally, what I like to do is I like to also season my water. So anytime I'm making rice or pasta, I always season my water. So you see me put some complete inside of the water, and you'll also see me put some chicken bouillon inside of the water as well, because this is what you call building a flavor profile. And just be mindful, because depending on the seasonings that you do have, they do have salt in it. You don't want to put too much seasonings on the food and then it turns out to be too salty. So just be mindful of what seasonings have salt and what seasonings don't have salt. But right now I'm building the flavor profile for my pasta. So as you'll see throughout the recipe, you'll see that no matter what part of the recipe I'm making, everything gets seasoning. And what that does is it creates a flavor profile to where now when you put everything together, it comes together cohesively. You taste all of the flavors. Now that the water has came to a boil, you want to pour in your pasta. Another thing to keep in mind is, as soon as you put the pasta in the water, you immediately want to stir around your pasta. You don't want the pasta to stick initially, because what happens is whatever pieces of pasta that do stick, they're going to stay together and the outside of the pasta is going to get cooked, but the whatever parts that stuck together, that part won't be cooked. So you'll have pieces of chewy pasta, and you don't want that. You want to let the pasta cook, and once the pasta is ready, as you can see right here, then you want to give it a nice stir. Then you want to take it off the stove, so that then you're able to strain it and get ready to put the pasta to the side. But don't throw away your pasta water, because that's also going to be another key factor for your pasta. If you want to thicken up your sauce, you could always use pasta water as a thickener because of the starch from the noodles. But that's also another tip to keep in mind. Now we'll transition to the next step, which will be preparing the chicken. Okay, so we're going to start off by pouring the oil into the pan so that we can get ready to sear off the chicken. Next, you're going to go in with the minced garlic. You want to let the minced garlic cook a little bit. Just be mindful not to have it too high, because you don't necessarily want your garlic to burn like mine did. So just be mindful of that. But once you let the garlic cook for a little bit, then you want to put in your chicken. You want to put your chicken in, and you want to let it sear on all sides. So once the chicken is cooked for about 5 to 10 minutes, you want to make sure that all sides are seared and that you cook it about 80% through, just so that once you transition it out of the pot and put it into the sauce, the chicken is still juicy, but then also too, you allow it to finish cooking once you put all the ingredients together, and you don't necessarily dry out your chicken. After cooking it about 5 to 7 minutes, you want to check it so that there's no pink on any side of the chicken. And you also want to throw a little seasoning on top of it, just to make sure that all sides of the chicken is seasoned, so that as you're eating the chicken, every bite has flavor. This is what I'm doing in regards to building a flavor profile for the chicken as well. So we've already pre-seasoned it, but a lot of the seasoning comes off once you sear it, because some of the seasoning just gets stuck to the bottom of the pan. So after you've browned it, for the most part, then you go back, you re-season it. Just be mindful of the salt once again, so that you're not making it too salty, but you do want to build a flavor profile. That's going to be a common theme in regards to cooking. You always want to make sure that you build a flavor profile. So it's been about 10 to 12 minutes and your chicken will start to look like this. One thing that's great about the marinade is that as the chicken cooks, it's going to create its own juice. It keeps the chicken moist, which is always a good thing. Alright, so now once your chicken looks like this, it's been seared on all sides, and it's about 80% cooked, you want to give it one final stir, and then you want to take it off of the stove. You want to separate it from the juice, and you want to take the juice and you want to put on the side in a container, and then you want to put the chicken in a separate bowl. Reason why you want to keep the juice is just because if you need to add extra flavor to your sauce, this is also another quick and easy way to continue to build on that flavor profile when it comes to making the sauce. Now onto the sauce. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with some oil. We're going to put some oil at the bottom of the pan, let that heat up. Now, after we've let the oil heat up for a minute or two, we'll start off with our onions. As the onions are cooking, we'll proceed to add our peppers. So we'll put the orange peppers in, then we'll put the red peppers in. You don't necessarily want to cook them all the way down, but you do want to get them soft. And you remember I told you about the juice that you separated from the chicken. So what you want to do is to add more flavor to your sauce. You can either take the sauce and put directly into your sauce once you've built it, or to add flavor as you're building the sauce, you could take the sauce and you could pour it into the peppers as they're cooking down. And what that does is that'll give it extra flavor. So once again, going through the common theme is we're building flavors. And that's all cooking is. Cooking is just building flavors as you go, making things taste good, knowing what flavors go with what flavors. And because this is a jerk pasta dish, you want to have remnants of jerk throughout every aspect of the dish. So you'll taste it in the vegetables, you'll taste it in the chicken. The only thing that necessarily didn't get any jerk sauce was the pasta. But the pasta already has a flavor of its own. So once you put all those flavors together, that's what makes your dish tasteful. I let the onions and peppers cook for a little bit. Then I come across with a little parsley flakes for color, just to add, just to make it look more vibrant. Then I come with my heavy whipping cream. Now, this is also an important part as well, because depending on how creamy you like your sauce, then that's contingent on how much whipping cream you put inside of your dish. So if you want more of a creamier pasta, then you put more heavy whipping cream. After I pour in my heavy whipping cream, then the next step that I do is I put in my chicken broth. And so once again, this is the same concept like the heavy whipping cream. Depending on how creamy you want your sauce, then it's also contingent on how much chicken broth you put inside of your sauce. So what we're doing is we're letting the heavy whipping cream cook down with the chicken broth. This is going to make our sauce for our pasta. I came back with a little bit more heavy whipping cream just because I wanted my sauce to be a little bit more creamier. I gave it a good stir, and I just wanted to let it cook down so that all the flavors could come together, so that when it's time to put in my chicken, the sauce will be cooked down enough and everything will come together like it needs to. Now, once I've let the sauce cook down for about 5 to 7 minutes, I come back and I insert my chicken and I mix everything up and let that cook for about another 3 to 4 minutes. After I've let that cook for about 3 to 4 minutes, then I come back with my Parmesan cheese. The Parmesan cheese is going to thicken up the sauce and give it that creamy texture that you're looking for. This is also important because once you get to this point, say if you wanted to add more heavy whipping cream like I just did, and you wanted to make your sauce more creamier, and you happen to put too much chicken broth or too much heavy whipping cream inside the sauce and it gets runny, that's where you have the pasta water. You use the pasta water because the starch from the pasta water will help you thicken up your sauce. So cooking, even though it can be intimidating at times, just look at it as a big science project. You have certain components in cooking that adds to things or take away from things. So for example, if you want to thicken up your sauce, you can use cheese, you can use pasta water. If you want to make it more creamy, you can add more heavy whipping cream. So these are the things that you can use to tailor your sauce and your dish to your own liking. So what I did was, once I used the original ingredients, I wanted my sauce to be a little bit more creamier. I wanted more sauce for my pasta. I'm a sauce person. So what did I do? I went and I just doubled the recipe. So I added 2 more cups of heavy whipping cream, and then I added some more chicken broth. And as you can see, now you get that creamy texture that you're looking for when it comes to the pasta. I let that cook down a little bit so that all those flavors can come together. Then you see me come back and add that pasta water, because what that pasta water is going to do is it's going to thicken up my sauce. I didn't want my sauce to be runny. I wanted it to have a creamy texture. Now, once you get your sauce to your liking from a flavor standpoint and from a texture standpoint, you come back with your noodles that you've already separated from the water. Now, another important thing to remember and take into consideration is you also want to keep some of that pasta water so that wherever you're holding the noodles, you have that at the bottom so that the noodles won't stick together like they did here. You could put it in a strainer, but what's going to happen is the noodles are going to stick together as they dry. So I would say get a bowl, put some pasta water at the bottom, and then just periodically stir it, because what is going to keep the noodles nice and loose and they won't stick together. Now that I've added the pasta noodles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss it around in the sauce, and I'm going to make sure that every noodle gets coated properly, that we'll mix it together so that we have a nice consistent pasta. Once we're done stirring up the pasta and it's evenly coated around, you come back with some parsley over top. Personally, I prefer fresh parsley, but I didn't have any, so I'm using some dried parsley. And you want to just give it a nice stir to give it some color and give it some extra texture. Then once you're done adding the parsley to it, you want to put the lid on it, and you just want to let it cook through for about 2 to 3 minutes, just so that the steam and everything can get through it and it cooks down just a little bit. After 2 or 3 minutes of cooking down, you take off the lid, and then I suggest you do a taste test to make sure that the pasta is tasty to your liking. Then if you want, you could always throw a little extra seasoning over the top. Then it's time to garnish. So what I use for a garnish is a little green onion. I chop up some green onion and I just sprinkle it across the top to just give it a little color. And there you have it, the honey jerk chicken pasta. So now that you have the recipe, give it a try and let me know what you think. Subscribe to stay updated on the next recipes. And we out.